The story begins in a snow-covered house, where an elderly woman named Barb sits sadly in front of her late husband's urn. She looks at an old photo of the two of them together, and, remembering their very first meeting, she steps out into the freezing weather. Packing some essentials into her truck, Barb sets off across the icy roads to fulfill her husband's last wish, to scatter his ashes into the lake where they first met. On the radio, a weather warning announces extreme cold and heavy snowfall ahead. After driving a while, snow begins to build up on her truck. She manages to stop in a clear spot, pulls out a map, and tries to find the way to the lake. But the directions confuse her. Stepping out of the truck, she stands in the snow, unsure what to do. Suddenly, she hears a strange, thudding sound. Curious, Barb follows the noise and arrives at a lonely, snow-covered cabin. There, she sees an old man chopping wood. But as she gets closer, Barb notices bloodstains on the ground. The old man, startled to see her, freezes for a moment. Barb says softly, "I just wanted to ask the way to the lake." The old man replies, "The lake is on the other side of the mountain." Barb hesitates, then asks, "Are you okay? There's blood here." The man quickly explains, "That's just deer blood." So Barb leaves from there and finally reaches the lake, the very lake where she first met her husband. Standing at the edge, Barb's eyes fill with tears. She remembers how she and her husband used to come here, sitting together on the snow, fishing by the frozen water. But suddenly, a gunshot echoes across the silence. Startled, Barb runs and hides behind her truck. From there, she sees a young girl running near the lake, and that same old man is chasing her with a gun. He threatens her, "Try to run again and you'll be dead." Then he forces the terrified girl back toward his cabin. Barb quickly tries to call the police, but there's no signal. As soon as they leave, Barb gathers her things and rushes to her truck, trying to escape. But the truck gets stuck deep in the snow. Helpless, she decides to head back toward the old man's cabin. There, she suddenly spots him walking away. Seeing the chance, Barb sneaks close to the cabin. Peering through the basement window, she sees the same girl tied up inside. Barb whispers softly, "Are you alone?" The girl nods her head yes. Just then, two vehicles arrive, and this time the old man is with his wife, who is also carrying a gun. Barb hides outside, listening closely to their conversation. From their words, she realizes that the old man kidnapped the girl at his wife's command, and now they are planning to kill her. Barb whispers to the girl in the basement, "I won't leave you behind." Then she runs back to her truck. Meanwhile, inside the cabin, the old man's wife starts bleeding from her nose. Suddenly, outside the cabin, she spots a girl's glove on the ground. Suspicion rises. Someone else must be here. When she looks toward the basement window and sees writing on the glass, she becomes certain that someone is helping the girl. Enraged, she turns to her husband. "Whose glove is this?" she demands. He replies, "I don't know, but earlier a woman came here asking for the way to the lake." Panicked, the wife says, "If that woman saw anything, it's over." She grabs her gun, drags her husband along, and heads toward the lake to kill Barb. But Barb is ready. She has placed her old ice fishing shed as bait. As soon as the old man approaches it, he falls through a hole into the freezing water of the lake. His wife pulls him out, shivering and drenched. By then, Barb has slipped back into their cabin. She breaks open the basement door to rescue the girl. Downstairs, she sees the girl chained and gently reassures her, "I'll save you." Barb goes back upstairs, turns on the water, and blocks the sink so that the house begins to flood. She also puts out the fire and soaks all their supplies. But as she steps outside, the old man's wife fires a shot, hitting Barb in the arm. Somehow, Barb escapes into the snow and disappears. When the couple return, their entire house is filled with water. Down in the basement, the rising water reaches the girl. The old man, after falling into the icy lake, is now shaking violently from the cold, and all their survival supplies are ruined. Meanwhile, Barb makes it back to her truck and tries to treat her wound, but then she realizes her ring is missing. She rushes back to the hole in the ice, searching desperately, but the ring is nowhere to be found. Heartbroken, she remembers when her husband had placed that ring on her finger, proposing to her. Tears stream down her face. And then she spots the old man's rifle lying nearby. She picked up and heads back toward the cabin again. Meanwhile, the old man, frozen from the cold, is being warmed in the car by his wife. Still, he's in bad shape. He says he can't move yet. His clothes are still wet. But his wife replies that they don't have much time. They must carry out the operation by the lake so that after the snowfall, the police can't find the evidence. And once the job is done, they'll find Barb and kill her too. They force the girl into their car as a threat. At that moment, the old man panics and notices his gun is missing. Furious, his wife slaps him and orders, "Go to the lake and get everything ready." Then she drives off with the girl. The old man drags their supplies through the snow and somehow reaches the lake, beginning the preparations so they can complete their plan. Barb watches him through binoculars. Seizing a chance, she returns to the cabin to try saving the girl again. But the girl is not in the basement. Gathering courage from the old man's tools, Barb pulls the bullet from her own wounded hand and treats the wound herself. She steps outside and smashes the old man's truck window. Using his radio, she somehow calls for help. "There are 2 people here who have kidnapped a girl. She's in great danger. I'm wounded too." This is the location. But then the old man returns and attacks Barb, trying to kill her. In self-defense, Barb swings an axe at his leg and stops him. The old man breaks down and tells the truth. "My wife is ill. She forced me into this. We chose that girl because she tried to kill herself before." Now, he realizes his mistake. Crying, he tells Barb he's become sick from the cold and needs a doctor. He gives Barb a ring back and says he found it in the cabin. Gradually, Barb begins to trust him. She tells him, "If you're really a good man, drive to the nearest town, call the police, then go to the hospital." The old man promises. Shivering, he walks back to his truck, hands Barb some bullets from his gun, and drives away. But soon his wife returns in a fury. "Why did you leave the spot?" she shouts. The old man, limping with his bloodied leg, says, "I'm wounded. I'm going to the doctor." His wife snaps, "You should have asked me. Are you running away from me?" He trembles and says, "This madness, leave it here. Let's stop." But she refuses to relent. "I won't lose this chance. We have to get to the lake." The old man asks his wife, "Are you sure that doctor will really be there?" He tries to reason with her. "There's still time. We can fix this." But suddenly, blood begins to run from her nose. She shakes her head and says, "If I leave this place, I'll die. You just want to get rid of me." In anger, she raises the gun and points it at her own husband. Meanwhile, Barb has returned to her truck. She thinks back to the moment she lost her baby, the hospital room, the crushing words, and her husband telling her, "We'll try again. Everything will be okay." Now, with that memory fueling her, Barb makes a desperate plan. She pushes her truck down toward the lake, then sets it ablaze. The black smoke rises into the sky, a signal for help. Before long, a police car arrives with 2 officers. Barb explains everything to them, and they agree to help. Together, they head back to the old man's cabin. Outside, the wife's car is already parked. The officers draw their weapons and approach. But before they can react, the woman bursts out of the cabin and guns them both down. She turns her weapon on Barb, firing wildly. Barb returns fire and shoots her in the leg, then scrambles away toward the woman's car. But inside, she sees a terrible sight, the old man's lifeless body. His wife had already killed him. Panicked, Barb runs behind the cabin for cover. The woman fires again, blasting the roof loose. The heavy beams collapse onto Barb, knocking her unconscious. In the darkness, Barb relives the worst day of her life. When her husband died quietly at the breakfast table, his illness finally overtaking him. When she regains consciousness, Barb realizes she's no longer free. She's tied up in the basement alongside the kidnapped girl. That's when Barb finally learns her name. The girl is Leah. Barb somehow unlocks her handcuffs, and together she and Leah search for a way out. They manage to reach a back door, but just as they try to escape, the woman spots them and slams it shut again. Barb remembers her husband's will, how he wanted his ashes scattered in the lake, the place of their most cherished memories. By morning, the woman drags Barb and Leah to the lake, where her husband had already set up a medical tent. Inside, they see a human liver transplant kit. Horrified, Barb and Leah realize the woman intends to cut out Leah's liver and put it into her own body. Barb pleads, "Take mine instead. Let Leah go." But the woman sneers, "Your body's no good anymore." She orders them to tie Leah to the table, but Barb secretly slips a nail into Leah's hand so she can free herself later. The woman shoots Barb and turns back to prepare the operation. But Barb forces herself up, shoves her, and stabs at her with scissors. A brutal fight breaks out. In the chaos, a lantern falls, igniting the tent in flames. Both women stumble outside, grappling for the gun. The woman manages to grab it, but it's out of bullets. Furious, she drags Barb across the snow toward the same hole in the ice Barb had made earlier. Meanwhile, Leah frees herself with a nail and escapes the burning tent. She runs to help, but the danger isn't over. Barb, determined to end it, chains herself to the woman and pulls her into the icy hole. Leah reaches the edge, but it's too late. Barb disappears beneath the freezing water with the woman. In her final moments, Barb scatters her husband's ashes into the lake, fulfilling his last wish. With peace in her heart, she sacrifices herself to save Leah. On the ice above, Leah finds Barb and her husband's old photograph buried in the snow. She tucks it close to her chest and slowly walks forward through the cold winds. The movie closes with a flashback. Years earlier, Barb and her husband smiling, captured forever in that photograph by the lake. And that's where the story ends.